I'm Fernando Mastrangelo, and this is The Path, an interview series that uncovers the business of being an artist.
People don't like to think of art as a business. And you know what? I get it. It kind of kills the romance of it. But that's not really realistic anymore. We're trying to grow. We're asking new sets of questions. We're using social media to expand our audience and even get new clients. So we're going to uncover some of the mysteries and strategies behind some of the most successful people in the field today. I want to share those with you so you can really see what it takes to build a successful studio.
Today I'm sitting with Adam Parker Smith, whose work I think is freaking genius. He's a sculptor, prankster, and his work always involves humor. We've been in the game for a long time together, but recently Adam's work has just been everywhere, being widely collected and reaching a high market value for a young artist. So it's a very interesting time for him, even though he's been at it for well over a decade. He also has a unique story about how he's been able to financially sustain his studio, which has not been through the traditional route. Adam also has some great insight on just being an artist today, and how many of you may approach your own creative businesses. Adam, thanks for doing this, man. This is Adam Parker Smith. We're at his studio in Bushwick, Brooklyn, essentially. And you're actually, okay, so The Path has been about interviewing designers, people in the industry. You're my first kind of like throwback for me, right? Like a sculptor that we kind of came up together, early parts of 2000. You know, I know your wife, so we've had a long history together.
Yeah.
And I've been following and tracking your work basically forever, but then once Instagram came along, I've been able to sort of keep in touch with you more and more and just watch as your progress has, as you've been progressing.
Right.
The last couple of years, I feel like you've hit on to, your moment.
Right.
You're like in your moment right now, I feel like. Is that true? I mean, that's how I feel, at least from, seeing it on, social media and whatnot, knowing you. And so let's start there. Let's start a little bit before, like as we were coming up, because a lot of it is like, you're 40 years old, right?
Right.
I'm 40 as well. And we're like now emerging artists, which I always think is really funny because we've been in the grind or we've been doing this since forever, 15 years. And
You can emerge for a long, long time.
You can emerge for a long time. But now it just finally feels like, we're starting to sort of see some of the rewards of all of that hard work,
right.
All the fucking, time you've put in and all that stuff. So let's start with how that's happened for you. Because you went through, galleries, doing this, hustling, being in the game, showing in multiple places. I mean, I feel like when I think about your career, it's just been a jumble of stuff.
Yeah, well, there are ingredients that I have like put into that pot.
Yeah.
The final coagulation is still a little bit of a mystery to me.
Yeah.
Like if someone took my work and showed it to me and said, hey, you're selling this work. They're selling this work, they're making money. I'd say, okay, that makes sense. I could see that. And then if someone did the same thing to me and said, they're not selling this work at all, I'd say, oh, yeah, I could see that. That makes sense. There's no, like, it's big, it's loud, it's bright, it's colorful, it's like expensive to make. So that's still, that one part of it is still an enigma to me. I know the ingredients. Like I can share the ingredients that I put into that pot that help to get things off the ground. And I think those are all really useful things. But like the actual moment when the traction began to occur, when people began to say like, yeah, okay. Like I'm not exactly sure why it was, at this moment and not before or not after, or with this work and not other work. So that...
okay, well let's talk about one of the ingredients. Okay. One of the main ingredients is obviously selling the pieces, right? Going from working through gallery systems, working through museums, through this kind of thing, right?
Right.
To where it is right now, where maybe those ingredients have changed.
Right. So like, why is the work selling now?
No. So how do you go from the many, many years of hustling, right, to this place where you are now? Like,
it's taken a certain amount of time to get your career to where it is.
Yeah, I mean, you really have to bang your head against the wall. And I was talking to my brother the other day. We were talking about this exactly, actually. And we were talking about, he's a musician. We're talking about how long it takes to like get anywhere in this world. And I was saying how like things are like picking up and going along now. And it's, yeah, you know, that's great. You've been doing this for like a decade in New York. Yeah. I said, you've been banging your head against the wall. And I said, well, the trick is to bang your head against the wall, but in different places. You don't want to just bang your head against the wall in the same spot. You got to make sure when you're banging your head, it's like all over the place. So that's the thing. It's the amount of tenacity and perseverance, or just lack of rationale that it takes to like just continue to like fail and make mistakes. And that's one of the reasons people come to me and ask me things, or even what we're doing now, I'm more than happy to do, because the main ingredient I think is just
perseverance.
But in the spectrum, like nearing stupidity.
Yes.
To like continue to do
right.
this.
And what that includes sometimes is absolute poverty.
Right.
No life.
Yeah, it's very uncomfortable. And a lot of artists, not all artists or musicians or writers will tell you that like that is not, unenjoyable. It's fulfilling. We were talking about the other night. Yeah. It's a fulfilling endeavor that doesn't necessarily like make you happy. Like happiness and fulfillment don't necessarily always go together. Sometimes they do. But like the last 10 years have been fulfilling.
Sure.
But I've definitely not been happy a lot of the time. It's
because with your work, right? Not with your work, because I feel like you.
With my work too, yeah, but I just mean this lifestyle, like to just to have no money, to have no time, to just be in the studio like every single day, and even the amount of rejection, all of that stuff that you have to endure, that's super difficult for people just to say, and sometimes it's not even in your face. People quite often are not generous enough to come up and tell you exactly why they don't like you or your work. Because when they do that's a favor. When they'll say, hey, I don't like what you're doing and this is why. A lot of people get upset when that happens, but I'm always like,
tell me.
Give it to me. But a lot of times rejection comes in the form of just nothing. Nothing happens, right. Nothing sells, nothing gets reviewed. And so in those cases, that's really difficult to deal with.
Do you feel like you dealt with that for a majority of your career until recently, or is that when was the tipping point for you in terms of this? Because man, I've been following your work forever, and I always thought it was good. You know what I mean?
Recently. I mean, I've always I always kept any sort of stuff like that hidden away.
Sure.
You can't broadcast your failures. Sure. Really, obviously. The thing that I think is super important is to always hold yourself accountable for all of those failures, because you are the only one that is truly accountable. Because a lot of times you see someone, how'd the show go? And they're a good friend, so they're going to tell you the truth. It didn't go well, it didn't make any sales, it didn't get any reviews. And then the next thing, the conversation will evolve to, well, why did that happen? And when you have this conversation with someone and it begins like, oh, well, the gallery I don't think worked hard enough, or, it was a weird month, or such and such happened.
I've heard those so many times.
Right. Those are the people that may not go on, because the only reason that your show didn't do well, the only reason you didn't sell work is because you weren't there, the work wasn't there.
I'm not always sure that that's actually true all the time. Okay. As I've been able to step back a little bit from an exhibition, its success, a series of work that you put out.
Right.
What I'm starting to understand is that things need to be marketed correctly.
Right.
They need to be previewed correctly. They need to be
but you can be in control of those things.
Now.
Right.
That's when I started to feel like I started to gain more control over the studio and the way the work is viewed and whatnot, because then it stopped me from having the excuse of the gallery not doing its job,
right,
not doing the right fare,
right,
not knowing the right people.
Right.
And so that's when it really started to realize that that's, the success of someone doesn't really always have to do with your work, because your work has been good forever, right? It's just now that it reached this sort of like, no, dude. I mean, no, I know you'll feel that way, but as a viewer, as an audience member, you say, wow, this work is really strong.
Right.
So, I think it's a combination of.
But it's a default setting. I think it's a good default setting to have in your mind. Things didn't go well. What can I do? What part of that?
So how did you deal with that? So give me an example. Like you had an experience like that. How did you come back to the studio and adjust?
For the most part, I mean, it's the very cool thing about what we do is that, in a way, you are always in control. So if you're a financial analyst and nobody has numbers to crunch, you're not really a financial analyst. If you are an artist and people don't buy your work, you come back to the studio the next day, you're still an artist, and that's a very, very powerful thing. And so the bottom line is your work. There's so many components and pieces to this puzzle, but the very cool thing, or the very comforting thing for me at least, or it can be unsettling depending on what kind of day you're having, is that the work is the bottom line. So if the work is good enough and the work is there, and you're invested enough in that work, then we're good. Then that'll happen. So I mean, and there's all of these other things that really help everything else along, and we'll talk about that. But the core, the meat of it is your work. So when you come back, things don't go well. How can I push that? And that's great. And if you can't do that, if you cannot evolve your work or push your work, or your work can't get stronger, then you shouldn't be doing it. And so it's always a thing. And there's nothing that anybody can help. That anybody can help you with that. They can help you with everything else.
You know what? I had that moment, man. Honestly, I feel like this drum piece that I made as a piece of furniture was that moment for me. It was this moment where all of a sudden there was enough eyeballs on the work because of this one thing. And then I was able to evolve past that and capture that audience and then continue. But you do, as an artist, have to find that one moment.
And nobody can do that for you. No, really. That's just like you have to do that. And everybody that's your own path.
Yeah, and it took me 10 years to get to that piece, although I had a massive roster of work that I had completed. But, and I get what you're saying. And I think often people forget that. They're like, well, I make work. And you're like, well, it has to be good. And it needs to be in that sort of moment of...
If you're confident in what you do in your work, then that's a very comforting thing. If there is doubt and insecurity there, then that can keep you up at night when you go, well, the bottom line is that might not be there. So, and that's something that I continue to hold myself accountable for. And I hope that I always will, complacency, I think, is very, very dangerous, or too much self-confidence in that what I'm doing is great and doesn't need to evolve. So there needs to be this push always.
So then how, also, this is going to get a little too
I'm contradicting myself.
But how are you then, you've hit on this series, right? These balloon series.
Right.
If they start to bring in, success, money to the studio, galleries, this type of thing, how do you evolve and not feel the fear that your next series may not, everyone's going to be like, I love these, but, you still got those balloon pieces? You're still making those balloon pieces?
Right.
You know what I mean? Right. Because the complacency can then come in that you're...
In the form of money.
Yeah. So it's not so much complacency anymore, but it's more... I got kids, I got rent, I got...
Right.
So that's a tricky thing right out, once you start having success under under a series of things that you're doing.
Definitely. There's short answers and long answers to that. I think basically, it's all of these things that we're talking about sound like abstract ideas, but they can be managed in a really sort of practical way. So you have your thing that's working and making money. just because there are people in your studio helping you make work and people are buying that work doesn't mean that you can't be a couple steps ahead, figuring out what those things are, starting to test them, do your R&D.
Right.
There's no reason that like you have to be, I mean, you have to be invested in your work, but once the work is getting produced and the shows are up, there's no reason that you have to still be back here. You can always
right.
be moving ahead. So I'd like to say that, I mean, with that in mind, I think the mode that I've been in for the last decade is gambling. Like, let's put this aside and put all our chips here. And so, and that's the way that I've like basically jumped from thing to thing. Is you sort of bet the farm each time and hope that it works. But once you begin to have some financial success, yeah, it's prudent to kind of like hedge your bets a little bit, keep a little like stock here, and try to like, you know.
Yeah, not gamble the farm every time. You still, you know, have risk. You still, you know, put yourself out there, but
Right.
it's a little more mitigated than before.
Sure, you just don't show the world the new stuff. Maybe just have a couple people over first, or what do you think? That's what Instagram is great too. Hey, Instagram, like, what do you think? What do you think about this?
All right, so
They don't like you, take it down.
let's talk about this tipping point, because this is really, I think it gets interesting. Are you represented by a gallery currently?
Yeah.
Which is the
The Hole in New York, and Evergold Projects in San Francisco.
Okay.
And a few other things that are gelling.
and a few others that are gelling.
Yeah.
And that's your main source of selling the work, or have you been able to? What does your structure look like currently?
My structure currently is a little unorthodox.
Yeah.
So this work has been selling through different avenues. Mm-hmm. Ultimately, it has the facade of the way that this normally works, which is that the work is distributed through galleries, and those galleries are ones that I have firm partnerships with, like The Hole or Evergold Projects, or looser partnerships that are gelling, like other places. But the way that the work is produced, paid for, purchased, is in all different ways still. So there's not like a firm model for that. But I think, one of the things with sculpture is that it's super expensive to produce, and so that's a problem that I've strategized with as much as possible in terms of like approaching. And so, if at all possible, use other people's money to get your work produced. Have the work paid for in terms of production before you can make it, which is sometimes difficult to do, to have someone buy something that isn't made yet. And that is one of the things. My practice is very conducive to making models and mock-ups of the work as it will appear exactly when it's finished before I even made it. And that's because they're balloons. So mm-hmm. or this work is balloons. So I'm able to make the work in its balloon form very quickly and cost effectively. I'm able to show the work. I'm able to sell the work.
Photograph it, sell it, right?
And then make the work. And so, which isn't always the case. There's a lot of times where I'll make a piece. I'll believe in a piece. This is a piece that I know is going to do well. But
so when you said like find other people to pay for your work, for the
right.
production at least, right? Because honestly, yes, that is the hardest part, is coming up with the production money for
right.
making the work. Now, did you go out and strike deals where you're saying, okay, listen, I need, it's cash flow. Basically, you need cash flow to make the stuff while it gets distributed, let's say.
Right.
So did you feel comfortable going out and trying to make those deals, or were you approached, or how does that work? Especially for like a young artist who's like, well, I don't know anybody. I don't know anybody who has those. I mean, obviously this is 10 years into the game for you, so it's not like, so you've earned your trust in terms of your brand, in terms of the brand of your art, so that people are willing to almost buy it online or.
Right. It's a weird thing because I grew up in retail, and so I've had to reconstruct my ideas of how that works because I had a very firm idea of it growing up in retail.
Your parents?
My parents owned a business, and I worked in that business. They owned a bicycle store, and so and a big part of that was repairs, but the other part of that was sales, and that was something that like my father, my uncle, and my mother all enjoyed doing. And for me, there's something really pleasurable about sales. There's something that I like about it. It's definitely not for everybody, but I like this idea of like speaking with a customer and building this rapport, and then like starting to like place little like picks in, and you slowly start to like get this person to buy your product. And conventional retail works in a certain way. In the art world, it works almost in reverse, and I found that
how so?
Like in conventional retail, you'll ask people questions. Oh, it's a nice day. Should we get the bike ready for you? You could be out riding it this afternoon, or what color do you like the best? And all of a sudden, the conversation isn't like, do you want the bike or not? It's that like you already have
assume that they want the bike.
Do you want it in red or you want it in blue? And so there's a lot of things like that. A customer walks in the door and it's never like, hey, what can I help you with? Because they'll say nothing. I'm just looking around. You say like, hey, it's nice day out. It'd be great day for a ride or something. You looking at road bikes or mountain bikes? And so all of a sudden, so you just like get them in this conversation. In the art world, you don't ask anybody for anything. You're just like doing your thing, and
in fact,
they're
you
a nuisance
avoid
to
asking
you. Yes,
anything.
I can't. I'm too busy right now. I'm sorry, or something. And so I've retained that side of me. I'm always happy to have people over and talk to them and like answer emails and stuff like that. So it's not like just pure rejection. But I found that the more that you ask people for things, the less anything ever happens. So it's this bizarre catch-22 where you have to go out and get things, but you can't use the most proactive tool in the toolbox for getting things, which is to ask for them.
Right.
So you have to go out and get things without asking for them, which is where all of the trickery,
right,
which is all the like trickery comes in. That's where, and Instagram is a great utensil for doing this, for like quote unquote asking the world for things. Because if you're dating and you're interested in finding a partner, you don't go into the bar or club or wherever it is that you're planning on meeting people. Let's say it's a bar. You don't go in and just walk up to someone and say, hey, listen, me and you, we should go home tonight. It just, like, that's not going to work.
Yeah. You
got to go into the bar, you got to order a drink, you got to sit down, and you got to put out the vibe.
Yeah.
And that's it. That's all you can do.
That's right.
And so,
yeah, but
it's very much like fishing.
But
you got to make sure that the bait is good and you throw it in there.
But this is changing. Because now the bar is on social media.
Exactly.
And so
exactly. It's great.
So yeah, you can put it out.
You don't have to go out anymore.
You don't have to go out anymore. You could just
you can go out from your couch.
Yeah.
Which I like. And
you can get similar, if not better, results from that.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, that's what's wonderful about Instagram now is that you can put the vibe out and 10,000 people see it. Right. Or more, depending on how good you are at getting that, Instagram following. So, yeah, that's been a huge.
So do you feel like
huge thing.
so the shift in your work? I mean, okay, let's talk. So the balloon series started when? When did you start making? A couple years ago.
Yeah, it happened. I was making these wall works, and actually, so Kathy Grayson, who owns and runs the whole, came to the studio, and I had one of these wall works on the wall, and I had an idea of how I was going to make one of these balloons solid. I hadn't done it yet. I just thought, this is easy. I'm gonna go to Home Depot. I get one of those 2-part expandable spray foams. I'm sticking in the balloon.
Spray it in the balloon, yeah. yeah.
Fill it up. No problem. Easy. I know it'll work. And so stupidly, I had put one of these balloons in this sort of wall assemblage, and Kathy came by and said, "Oh, like I like this."
Yeah.
I mean, she didn't come by on her own will. A collector like forced her to come there or something, like coerce. You're like coercing people. So she came by, her and Bert, and she said, "I like this." And she goes, "What's up with the balloon? Is that real? What's going on there?" And I said, "No, it's gonna be filled and solid, and don't worry about it. We're good." And she goes, "Okay, cool. Like, yeah, with that in mind, I like this piece. Let's put it in this group show." I said, "Okay, great." And she left. And the next day, I came into the studio and realized that I was in big trouble because this idea that I had of how this balloon was going to get made was like
Not possible.
it's a disaster.
Right.
No, a total disaster.
Sure.
And so the show was in like 3 weeks, and I spent the next 3 weeks like trying to figure out every single way possible to do this. And I mean, it's crazy. The way I ended up starting this whole series is not at all related to the way that they're being done now. It was really.
And again, this was one component of an assemblage piece.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so then what happened is that went great, and
The group show.
yeah, it went good. It went good. It went fine. They didn't like
sell the piece?
this. No, they did not
Okay.
sell this monstrosity. No, thank God, because I mean, luckily, a lot of that work didn't sell because it was barely hanging on the wall. It was like, and I made it out of expandable foam and mylar and so. But that was the thing. That was in a way that was great because no one knew. It looked great. It looked really good, and that was the end of the story. And so Kathy called me into her office, and Kathy, she's not a big conversationalist, and she said, "Hey, we should do something in the spring, something weird. End of conversation." So,
Okay.
right.
So you're like, all right.
I've worked with Kathy for a long time, and we've had about 10 conversations. They're all about that. Like, we have spoken to each other about 90 words. So, which is great, man. She's like Steve Jobs. She's just like, something in the spring, something weird, end of conversation. I mean, serious, that was it. Hey, that was a fun group show. Let's do something in the spring, something weird. And then she was back to the computer. So I went home, and I was like, oh, I think that I'm doing a show at the Hole in the spring. Something weird. And and I was in the mindset, because I had been for so long, of things not selling, you know? And once you get used to that, not making money, then you might as well just do something weird because, why not? So I thought, I'm going to do a really big show, and I'm going to do a really weird show. And I thought, I'm going to do these and every time that I'd found in the last 10 years that I had stopped myself and thought, I need to make myself more commercially viable. I need to figure out ways to get my work on the wall, have it be more flat, have it be more sellable. It always the work was always flat. It never worked. And I had kind of given up on doing that. And I just thought, I don't know what I was thinking actually, because I really couldn't have gone on forever just doing that and not making any money. I mean, there's food stamps and other things, but at a certain point, Anyway, so I don't know what I was thinking, but I thought, well, I'll do this big show, it'll be weird, and I decided to make these gigantic figures out of balloons. sort of reminiscent of Greco-Roman antiquity or Greek statues. And so we did the show. It was really big. It was really weird.
I went to it.
Yeah, it was a big weird show.
This guy was kind of in it.
No, this was the second.
It?
This was the second show. The first one before that.
You did. That was before that big.
Yeah, they were all like gold, gold standing figures, and we hedged our bet a little bit with the wall works. We had some wall works in there. We thought that would be a good idea. And so the show basically went how I thought it would go. Everybody thought it was a good show.
Yep.
There weren't any sales really. I mean, there was a little bit, and there weren't very many reviews.
Okay.
And I thought, oh, okay, which is I had set myself up mentally for that, and so that was fine. It was like, how'd the show go? It went good. It went how I thought it went. And then I moved on and I started making other work because I thought, like, I can't be doing that. And I did another show, and then the show that I had done at the Hole was at the end of the summer. And then in December, it's just people started buying it. I don't know why. Something happened. I'm not sure. I think people were like,
It started to catch on. That's what happened. It gave time to like.
They went down to the fair, and there were some smaller pieces.
I see.
And I think people were like, oh, this is for real. That wasn't just like a thing. And then it was like a feeding frenzy. And then it was like, oh, okay, I guess I'm gonna make big weird work. I think maybe that's the thing.
This was December of last year?
2 years ago.
2 years. To Miami.
Yeah.
And it became a feeding frenzy. And then that's when you did that second show at the Hole.
Yeah, because I mean
you were ready to launch. You were now like, this is I'm gonna fucking go.
Well, I hadn't had any. I didn't think that I was going to do that. But they started selling the work, and so Raymond came to me and said, "Hey, we should capitalize on this momentum,
sure,
and like do another show. Maybe you can like make the work a little better.
Yeah. Like
maybe it cannot like fall apart."
Right.
I thought, okay, so we did the second show. It was home run, really really great. They sold everything, and we had a bunch of capital at that point. And so at that point, and the work was still fabricated in a pretty DIY. I mean, everything is still DIY, but in a pretty lo-fi way.
Sure.
And so I
remember the exposed backs. You could
right.
armatures. Yeah.
I was doing everything in here. I was doing everything by myself. It was just like a one man band, and I realized that in order to evolve my career, that production value had to go up so that everything else could rise as well. And so I just invested the capital from that show into production basically, and got a small body of work because it was expensive to do. Got a small body of work that I could prove like now we can make the work in this way. And at that point, investors and collectors and galleries, this sample of work allowed them to see the potential of what everything could be, and at that point, it was a hop and a skip to like
the
get
access
money
to the other.
Yeah,
right.
To do that, and so now but the nice thing for me, and this is this will be possible for some people's practices, but not everybody's, is that it's very easy for me to come in here, blow up some balloons, or make my own balloons, and put them together and see if things are going to work or not, and even show them to people, or even make renderings, put those renderings on Instagram, or Photoshop them and send them out to people, and have them see this product without me really even spending more than $20.
Sure.
But this is a piece that may cost 10 grand to fabricate or something or more, but I'm able to like make and even not even a rendering, but an actual, that I'm able to make that actual piece in its sort of inflated form. And so there are some people's work, Carolyn, my partner, was making work. casting styrofoam, but she was able to oftentimes see her work beforehand because she's able to see it in the form of styrofoam before she casts it in the hydrostone or the resin or whatever she's doing. So so that has been really helpful for me too. So, and often the actual piece will be different colors or look different or something, but the quality has been proven, the product has been proven, those images are proven. So people still I think people still like artists to, surprise them a little bit. Hey, it's a little different than we thought it was going to be. It's because it's better now, or whatever it may be.
It's funny that you would even call it a product. It's you've gotten to the point where you've separated yourself as, you're obviously invested in your work, but you also recognize that there's a market to, a lot of artists don't talk about their stuff as product, you know what I mean? Because you feel like you're honing in on the craft of the thing that you do, and then it becomes this thing that you can repeat.
I mean, for me, and I think this is true of a lot of artists, almost all artists, what you're making in one way or another is a commodity.
Yeah.
And obviously there's cultural significance to what we're doing. But in the moment, it's a commodity. Yeah. And so, and that's the relationship that I have with my work. So when my work and I are in the studio together, just the two of us, I try to have it be as intimate as a relationship as possible, and I don't think about that other stuff.
Right.
I just think about what would be the most badass thing I could do in the studio right now, because that will crush your creative parameters if you begin to think about your work as a commodity. So it's a difficult sort of meditation because you have to go to the studio, you have to release all of that other stuff, and just think about I'm going to make some crazy shit today.
Yeah.
And then you have to step back, say, now I'm going to sell some crazy shit.
Right.
And think about it that way. And so there's a lot of editing, there's a lot of things that just this isn't going to work now, or this, and that's, I think you have to be emotionally invested in the production, and then you have to be as attached as possible for that other part of it. Because people come in and go, hey, we don't... What's that?
Do you think about it as branding? I mean, you have this experience in retail. Obviously, there's... Do you think about how you're promoting yourself and how people are seeing your work and things of this nature? I mean, or do you allow the gallery and some of your consultants and things to worry about that stuff?
No, I'm still heavily involved in that in that part of it, for sure. Because in a way, that's sort of part of... That's always been a part of my practice too, is this sort of this tongue-in-cheek humor with it's
just you naturally. That's just who you are.
Yeah. So for me, it makes sense for me to be involved in that because there's this prankster side of my work that just makes sense that it's there for
you're present, right?
in the way that the work is being put out there, that there should be some sort of people on their toes. They're not quite sure, is he serious? Is that a thing or not a thing? Did that person come to the studio or not to the studio? Did that happen? And so that's sort of part of the fun, it's
for you to almost not take yourself so seriously too, and be able to have fun with the medium of the internet or the medium of Instagram, and it's become part of your repertoire of things that you do.
Definitely, and I think it's important. I watch a lot of comedy and a lot of comics, and I watch them sort of construct their jokes, but also their brand basically, and some of the more successful ones I think very much implicate or themselves in that joke, because that's almost the way, when you're talking about yourself, you have so much more liberty to be cutting and cruel and honest than you would if you were talking about someone else, because at that point then you're a bully, really.
Sure.
When you're talking about yourself, though, you can talk about almost anything. And so that's the thing with my work, and I view my work as an extension of myself. And so if I can be as cutting and as critical and as irreverent as possible with myself and my work, that allows me this freedom to like say and do sort of outrageous things that I wouldn't be able to do if I was pointing my finger at someone else. So it makes sense in that regard. It makes sense for me to very much be involved in that side of it, so that I have that power. Because without me, it becomes hollow, or it becomes it
Yeah, I get it.
it loses its
it loses its soul.
It loses its soul. Yeah. So I have to be involved.
And are you doing any direct sales to clients? Are you interested in that model? Is that something that you even think about?
Yeah, all the time. I mean, it's something that I loved. That like I said, I love sales, so I love the idea. And so
Yeah, exactly.
if I'm not selling out of my studio, which I don't do anymore because people don't want that. I mean, from me, they think they do, but they don't.
You mean clients, collectors, somebody will come by, they'll think that they want to buy from you.
Obviously they want to come in here, they want to get 30% off of retail value, and they want to know the artist and so on and so forth. But deep down, they don't. They want your work to be harder to get than that, because you have something that has no intrinsic value. You have to create that value.
Yes.
So if they come in and they can instantly take 30% off the top of that value that didn't have any value in the first place, that's not a good thing for me. So, I have to make it a little more difficult for people to get my work. With that said, I very much work with the partners that sell my work in the sales of my work, because first of all, like I said, I like to do it, and second of all, I'm good at that. So there's no reason that I wouldn't be involved, but it always has to go through this certain distribution network, and it just no one is ever disappointed in that. I mean, people think they are like, I can't get that deal, but as soon as they want the deal, or as soon as they get that deal that they thought they wanted, the thing that they just purchased had its value decreased. So.
Also, what do you mean?
Because when people get a work out of the studio from an artist, it's 30% off or something.
Okay.
When they're getting it through the gallery, they're fortunate to get 20%. So there's no reason to take this work that has no intrinsic value and decrease the value just for no reason, basically. So in order to maintain value, it's sort of important for it to go that way for me. But that is because I am still working within this model where distribution happens through the galleries. So if that weren't the case, if I had decided that the work is no longer going to be shown through the galleries, I'm no longer essentially a wholesaler and the galleries are retail, this model, and that the retail happens just from my studio, then it would be a different story. I would say, sure, you can get the work from me. You want a discount, 15%, that's the end of the story. There's no like out of studio deal or anything like that. But because, I'm working through this gallery distribution network, people come to the studio, they think if you get the studio deal, so on and so forth. So yeah, I'm involved, but it has to happen within this framework in order to like help maintain value, because that's sort of
I see.
And that's an aspect too that I am getting to the point now in terms of the pricing of my work where I'm leaving it more and more up to other people, because there's more money involved, and I'm more out of my element now. And there's certain amounts of money I'm like, okay, that's what you guys think. That seems like a lot of money to me, but okay.
So then, how do you now deal with the next 5 years of your career? Because so you went through a rough period of time where you, at one point in your mind, you're like, dude, all right, things never sell, the reviews don't come through, but you had a good show, whatever.
Right.
Then you enter into something where something popped off.
Right.
Now you do have an influx of money and access to a different type of collector base and all this.
Right.
And you have this series that's extremely popular.
Right. Right. What's my next move?
How does Adam Parker Smith evolve successfully from this to the next series or the next thing that You know, and I mean, and
Man,
and
friend,
I,
you're
and I,
gonna do when you do that. I'm gonna watch you. I don't know. It depends on who you interview next. I'll talk to you about that. I need to watch that video because I don't know, man.
The question is that this is something that we all face. It's like weird.
Right.
You struggle your entire life to have the moment of just to have the ability to come to your studio every day and actually make money or work as an artist full time.
Right.
To then, holy shit, how do I maintain or sustain this?
Right.
Which I'm not really asking you to answer the question. It's a question that I have for myself and that I have for other artists that I'm watching as they, you know what I mean?
I mean, I think the only thing that I could say would be to stabilize yourself as much as possible so that you can continue to like take those gambles.
Yeah.
And I mean, obviously that for the most part takes place in the financial realm of what you're doing. So make sure that, you know, you're taken care of. And then, you know, like a gambler will always have a certain amount of money that they are pooling from, and they have their amount of money that they're gambling with. And those are two different pools of things. So you want to be as free as you can with this amount of money, but make sure that you have your foundation. So obviously you would you know, stabilize. So stabilize, I think if you're stable enough, if your foundation is stable enough, then you can like start to make these gambles. And I think you see like people oftentimes when they start to become successful, they become really successful because all of a sudden they have the means to do this. They have their support system here, and they're able to like really make gambles that they maybe were not able to make before. And so
that's also piggybacked on years and years and years of working at it, so that you understand how to do it even.
Right.
You know what I mean? It's just not.
And you have I mean, not just
like
financial,
if you were 25,
right,
and you had started this series,
right,
and you popped off,
right.
do you think that you would have been able to manage it and even mitigate all the money, the success, the people, the this, the that, the crowds, you know, like flying to Miami, what that means, hanging out with the right people? Would you understand all that? You know what I mean?
I think maybe, but maybe not. I mean, a lot of young artists and musicians and people who become successful when they're younger mess that up in some way. The other thing, too, that I've learned, and I think it's actually really healthy, is having all this rejection, because I've forced myself to evolve and continually be evolving. And I think a lot of times it can be a curse when someone's successful very young. Not always, but sometimes they start their series that is working and they're 22, and they just do that thing because they don't know that, hey, you can evolve, you can push yourself, there is more. So I think the main thing that I've gotten from years of like not being successful is like self-evolution, like continue to push yourself no matter what.
And in a weird way now, that's locked into your brain. So no matter
it's
what,
a way of working.
Every day, even next show, you're still going to feel like, wow, if everything sells, I'll still be super impressed. You know, you won't be expecting it. You'll always have that mentality of...
And thinking, okay, we did that worked. Now what are we going to do next? Like, what's the next step? You know, and everybody wants to evolve, obviously, but like, you know, I've been evolving in like big ways where I've had to be like, okay, we're going to toss all that. What's the next thing? It's going to be fresh. It's going to be all new. I got to like reinvent the wheel every time. So I'm trying less and less to completely reinvent the wheel, but it's like, hey, how are we going to go big? Like, what's the next, like...
You know what I think is going to be at the center of that for you is your personality and the way that you sort of see the world, the way that you sort of... That language, the way that you do that, that's what'll carry your practice, I think. You know what I mean? Beyond the balloon series, it's like this is an introduction to who you are as a thinker.
Right.
But then that will end up carrying you into your new ideas and stuff like that. And in the best case scenario, of course.
Yes, I hope so. I mean, I'd like to believe that the balloons are successful because of the undercurrents of humor and dysfunction and
but that's been in your work forever.
Right. And and that's the thread that I would retain.
That's right.
And the balloons, you I will continue to do, and they may dissipate and or morph into something else, or be part of the work. But like, I don't have any intention of like staying here.
Cool.
But
Yeah, that's great. I mean, that's kind of like, it's interesting for you to be able to see that, admit it, and say, okay, like I get it, and I will evolve past this.
Right.
I mean, I think it shows the years of,
I would get bored.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't have like I'm like, patience isn't one of my virtues, and I'm not like, and neither is contentment. I like to continue to like do something new. So yeah, I mean, it'll hopefully it'll work, and if it doesn't,
You know what life is like before and after.
Yes, that's so bad.
No, listen, you're gonna be fine because you're a smart and interesting artist, and that's at the crux of it, right? Like you said at the beginning. You have to have that before anything else.
If it's not there, then
Look, this has been great. We're almost out of time. I wish we could. I want to come back, and we'll do another one at some point.
With the vast studio.
With the vast studio in the background.
Yeah.
But listen, dude, I'm glad you opened up about this stuff. Thank you. I know, I'm a fan.
Thanks.
I'll always be a fan.
Thank you, man.
Yeah. So, thanks, bud.
Thank you.